Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two, and a homemaker by choice. Around here, slow living isn't a trend or an aesthetic, it's a lived seasonal rhythm, and it's a gentle revolution. In these episodes, I share reflections on living at a human pace, tending to our small home, growing food on a balcony and at the allotment, and finding joy in the ordinary days. This is a space to question default, to step out of the rush and to choose a quieter, more intentional way of living. If you're ready to join the unhurried revolution, then you're in the right place. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, and today we are going to continue to dive into slow living a little more. So last week, our first episode back was all about slowing down without starting over, and just like quashing this idea that we have to have a reset and we have to start over to be able to live slowly and everything has to be perfect. And this week I wanted to dive into a slightly different topic, and I think it'll be interesting to you. I know it's something that I really am really passionate about, and that is what slowing down actually looks like in real life. And I want to talk about that because, so much of what we see online is the aesthetic version. And I want to talk about what it actually looks like when it's not the aesthetic version, and it's not aspirational, and it's not removed from the realities that so many of us have, things like work, care, money, the bodies we live in, the health we have, and the nervous systems that we have to contend with. Because there's a version of slowing down that lives almost entirely online, and it's beautifully created, it's quiet, it's spacious, it's sunlit, and it implies long mornings, empty calendars, and this kind of uninterrupted presence that most people just simply do not have access to. And then there's actual slowing down in real life. And that slowing down is where there are still children that need to be fed, and work still needs to be done, money still needs to be earned, laundry piles up, especially in my house, energy fluctuates, and rest has to be negotiated rather than just assumed. And that's the kind of slow living I'm interested in, and I'd hazard a guess it's the kind of slow living that you're interested in as well. So in real life, slowing down is rarely visible. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't always look calm, and it almost never looks like doing nothing. Now, most of the time, it looks like just choosing differently inside the same circumstances that you've already had. It can look like staying, like tending instead of escaping, and like just making smaller, quieter adjustments that maybe don't photograph that well, but they do change how the day feels in your body. And slowing down in real life often begins with just noticing how much you're carrying, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. And it can be things like the background noise, the constant low-level urgency, the way your attention is always half elsewhere, maybe noticing that you are tired because you're not doing anything wrong, but you're being asked to hold too much at one time. And instead of responding by trying to fix your life and reset, slowing down actually asks something different of us. It asks what can be contained in that space. And for me, in practice, slowing down has really looked like reducing fragmentation. And that's having fewer tabs open. And that's literally and metaphorically, if I'm honest, because I'm one of those people that has like 1,000 tabs open on their computer. It's fewer half-finished plans, fewer expectations that every moment that you exist in should be useful. It's also looked like allowing my days to just have a shape rather than a list. And I think there's this really common misconception that I find when it comes to me is that because I don't do a traditional job, I freelance and work for myself, and because I home educate my children, so I am not rushing off in the morning to take them to school. I am not then going on to a place of work. I am not sitting in this like fixed capacity. I think there is this misunderstanding that I just have all this leisurely free time and that I'm just doing nothing. But and that, I'm not just making that up. That is something that has been said to me multiple times to make me feel like that is actually what it looks like. But the thing is, I don't overly share tons and tons online. Like, I'm very mindful with how I share on Instagram, and that would be the place that I mostly get comments about slow living. Yeah, I don't know what it is, to be honest. I presume it's because, I only really post maybe 1 to 2 stories a day. There's a lot more that goes on inside a 24-hour period than you can sort of really share in 1 to 2 stories. But my life does look different. And so, I would take that on the chin. I don't have to get up and rush to a job. But equally, I'm recording a podcast episode at 7:25 on a Sunday night. So my work is different, and we schedule it that way. We schedule it so I work when my husband isn't working, and I'm not working in the monetary capacity when he's working. I'm generally home educating the kids during that time. So it's work nonetheless. But just like parenting is, he's down there right now, parenting, unpaid labour. We do what we got to do to get things done. So I do get that, it doesn't necessarily look traditional, and maybe that's why it looks easier. Maybe because I don't have those time constraints. But then, these things, there are other things that come into that, other difficulties. We've all got busy lives, and I try to convey that. My life is still very busy, even though, I don't have the luxury, let's say, of dropping my children off at school and, doing my work in those hours, or just actually having the time to myself. Quite, it would be lush. We do a lot of stuff. Home education is rarely done at home, and we're often out at classes and groups and play dates, our co-op, forest school, allotment school, like you name it. We're doing lots of stuff. But my whole point in this is that we all have very busy lives, and it's about finding slowness within them. And, like I was saying, for me as well, it's looked like accepting that some seasons just look different. And there are some times where slowing down really confronts us and clashes with the way we've been taught to live. And I used to refer to it a lot, and for some reason I stopped referring to it this way. I'll try and get back into it. Like living a life of default, living life the way we've been told to live, and we just do the same things that generations before us did without questioning why we do it and whether it's right for us and our families. And because of that, we're really used to treating discomfort as a problem that we need to solve immediately. Like, we need to optimize it, rework it, improve it. But when we slow down, it's not about rushing to fix the discomfort. If you can sit with it long enough to understand what it's asking for, slowing down sometimes is asking for rest, or fewer input, or boundaries, or asking you to stop pretending you have more capacity than you do. And in real life, I think slowing down often looks like doing the same things as you do in a busy life, but just with less pressure attached. It could be cooking the same meals, but not trying to make them look impressive so you can take a picture for Instagram. Guilty as charged. I used to always take pictures of my food for Instagram. And I used to have like, if it looked good, I wanted a picture of it, and I'd get annoyed, like, oh, I've got sauce there, it doesn't look good. Or, if I wanted to take a picture of my house, everything had to be perfect, so I never took a picture of my house, because guess what? My house is never perfect. And I've let go a lot of those expectations. Like, I posted I post frequently pictures of my house that, you've probably got someone's t-shirt dumped on the floor, or there's toys everywhere, like just a normal house. I live here, and I want it to look like I live here, and I want the children to think like it looks like we live here too. So it is just doing the same things, working the same hours, but maybe not expecting yourself to perform at your peak output all the time. It's parenting the same children, but realizing that the idea that you can't be endlessly patient or perfectly regulated. It's not possible. You are a human. And yeah, I just think it's really important to, you know, look at what it might look like to lower the bar. And not because you failed, but because the bar was so high, it was never humane to begin with. And, another thing that we can do as well is letting go of what is kind of like a constant self-surveillance. We're constantly monitoring ourselves, even if we don't realize it. Like, am I doing enough? Am I behind? Am I keeping up? Am I doing this right? Am I parenting right? Am I calm enough? Am I relaxed enough? Am I resting right? Like, that internal monitoring takes an enormous amount of energy. And when you stop doing it, even partially, something softens within you, and you are better able to pay attention and be more in your body, and you sort of begin to inhabit your life rather than constantly evaluating it or living on the outside of it. And let's be honest, and I think this, I do think this. In real life, slowing down isn't linear, because there are days that feel spacious and lovely and right and beautiful and sunlit and perfect, aesthetic, if you will. And there are days where you feel scattered and crazy and busy and overwhelmed. It doesn't mean that you're not doing it right. It just means you are human living inside a human life. And all you have to do is just come back to yourself and remember why you're doing it. It's very easy to get caught up in the flow, and sometimes it's not even, like day after day. Life happens, life is busy. It's just about trying to prioritize that and just come back to yourself. Because, regulation isn't a permanent state. It's like a relationship that you have to keep returning to time and time again. And, it might be cancelling something. It might be cancelling plans you had, or saying no without explaining, or staying home when you could go out. Or, it might look like going out because actually isolating yourself could make things worse. It's not about withdrawal, it's about discernment and understanding what are the right things for you, and learning the difference between what drains you and what restores you, and trusting yourself enough to respond accordingly to that. And I think this is something I think that often goes unsaid, that slowing down in real life can actually feel quite boring, quite repetitive, that nothing is happening. But that boredom is often a sign that your nervous system is no longer being constantly stimulated or managed, and that things have settled enough for you to actually feel time again. Because we live in a very busy, always on, very overstimulated world. It just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Everything is busy, everything is always on, everything all the time. And I think it can be really difficult to disconnect from that. And I mean, I'm guilty of this as well. I can't, I'm in the kitchen, I'm making the kids lunch, I'm listening to a podcast, I'm thinking about this, that, and the other. Like, my content brain is always whirring. It's my creativity, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I love sitting here with a microphone. I love being on my Substack and writing. And I even do really actually enjoy taking pictures and creating nice stuff for Instagram. I am a creator. I have been a creator for 20 years. I've been writing for 20 years. That's wild. However, we are in this place where we are always multitasking, and sometimes we need to just let things go in a more sequential way. So we don't need to be eating our dinner, listening to a podcast, and scrolling Instagram at the same time. We can just eat our dinner. You can still scroll Instagram. Don't let people tell you that you can't. if that's what helps you decompress for half an hour, go off and do it. Don't let somebody else judge you. But yeah, it's just about getting back into our bodies. Because, and like I said, it can sometimes feel boring. But yeah, that's just a sign that things are settled. And, it can be uncomfortable when you're used to using busyness as that badge of honor, as a buffer. Because slowing down, it's slow, and it's just finding those little spaces of slowness in your day. And it can also mean letting go of the idea that you've got somewhere to be, that you need to arrive somewhere, because there isn't sort of like this final version of slow. There isn't a point where your life just becomes perfectly balanced and stays that way. It ebbs and flows, and it's just an ongoing adjustment and listening to yourself, and yeah, just understanding that you always have permission to change your mind. So in my own life, slowing down has meant accepting that my capacity is finite, and I design my days accordingly. So, like I said, we have a very busy life. I'm home educating the children. I am running this business, and home educating the children alone is a full-time responsibility that I have taken on. Now, my husband and I both home educate the children. It's not just my job. I would say I take on a heavier balance, and that's just because that's the way it works. My work is a lot more free and easy. And the time we home educate is during our days. And during our days is when my husband is at work and I am not at work. And so, but home education happens all the time. There is plenty that happens on holidays, on breaks, on weekends, in evenings. But I would say probably, and I think he would agree, I take on more of the load than that. And that's fine. I'm perfectly happy with that. But, that is busy. We have things like classes and groups. We do a co-op. The kids go to a forest school during spring, summer and autumn. We host at our allotment, and we have play dates, and it's busy. They do extracurriculars as well. And so it is busy. And, it's just about understanding that I don't have unlimited capacity. And so we design our days accordingly, and we make it so that sometimes we have lesser priorities, and sometimes we let things just be average. And it's, allowing my home to support me instead of performing for others, and trusting that a quiet life is not an unambitious one. And it's just fitting those things in. And, I work in a very unique and specific way, and it just works. It just does. Everybody is not me. So it's up to you to find what it looks like. And that's something I've said on this podcast from the very beginning. Your life will not look like my life, and that is completely fine. We have to find what works for us. And I'm just here to share how it works for me, any ideas or tips or suggestions I have along the way. And then it's up to you to take it and do with it what you wish. You can disregard it entirely if you like, or you can say, no, actually, there's something in that. Let me try it. Let me see how that might work in my life. And, it might be that little spark of an idea that helps you. But crucially, I think slowing down has just meant refusing the narrative that says if you're tired, overwhelmed, or longing for something more gentler and slower, that you've just got to start over, because you don't need to just start over. And most of the time you just need support in your life, not this complete reinvention. And you just need fewer demands. You don't need to go out and have a whole new identity. You need to find space in your life to breathe inside the life that you actually have, not try and create a different life. That won't work. It won't work creating a different life. This is the life you have. You've already built it, and it's just about finding those spaces to slow down within that. And it's actually not that dramatic. It's quite subtle. It's cumulative. You will notice it over time. And it is the accumulation of those really small choices that say, this is enough for today, or this week, or this month. I'm not going to overschedule myself anymore. And if there's something I want to leave you with, it's this. Slowing down isn't something that you achieve once your life is tidy enough or organised enough or quiet enough. It's just something that you practice in the middle of the mess. And you practice it as you. You don't become someone else. All right, guys, I hope that was helpful. I hope the last 2 episodes have really sort of like solidified in your mind what slow living isn't and what it can be, and maybe just give you some food for thought on how you can start implementing it in your own life. As usual, you can find all of the show notes for today's episode. I usually do like a little blog style post to accompany each episode, so you can find them over on Substack. If you're subscribed, it'll have landed in your inbox, but it's also over on my Substack page. Please go over there and subscribe to me, of course. Of course, go subscribe to me, because that's where I do the main body of all of my work over on Substack. So that's theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. You can also find me on Instagram at The Slow Living Collective. So I will catch you in the next episode.